Welcome to the strangeness of Zoom, but we're all here. And for a second, I want you to look beyond your screen to whatever's in front of you. Maybe it's a wall, maybe it's a window, and imagine that thing in your physical space to be in a different space, or maybe imagine it to be something entirely different. Place yourself for a second at Skowhegan, and maybe you're looking at a different wall, a different window in your former studio, or maybe what you're now looking at is a tree down that long pathway back home. Or maybe you're looking at a corner at the library or one of the workshop spaces. Place yourself there, and instead of that being what it is in front of you, imagine it to be that thing at Skowhegan. And just maybe someone else on this strange thing called Zoom is imagining that same thing, that same corner, that same tree. And that person will see you there.
Hello and welcome to Skowhegan's virtual awards dinner. In these extraordinary times, I want to express my profound gratitude to each of you for tuning into this celebratory program in support of Skowhegan and our extraordinary honorees, ANATSUI, the Foundation for Preservation of Art and Embassies, and Barbara HUNT MCLANAHAN. So much has changed since our last event when we sat shoulder to shoulder at Cipriani. Most notably at Skowhegan, we had to postpone the 2020 session, only the second closure in our history. But I want you to know that this is an organization that seeks out silver linings. We have been hard at work since March to make the most of these challenging times. In Maine, we've capitalized on the empty campus to advance critical building projects, including studios, housing for participants and staff, and a dining hall renovation. The first publication on Skowhegan's history and impact is underway, written and researched by art historians Ingrid Schaffner and Faye Hirsch. And across every facet of the organization, visible and behind the scenes, our full staff have been tireless and flexible in their work so that post-COVID Skowhegan will be even more able to offer emerging visual artists a transformative and life-changing experience. The awards dinner always feels like a reunion. It's the one time of year we gather together to celebrate and sustain this exceptional place. Though we are apart, we feel glad knowing that so many of you are on the other side of the screen celebrating Skowhegan and the exceptional award recipients. We also acknowledge those who are gone and raise a glass to David Driscoll and Mildred Bryn, two of our guiding lights who recently passed away. David, class of 1952, faculty artist, governor, trustee, advisor, demonstrated how this program can forever alter an individual artist's life. And Mildred, trustee chair emerita, served with force and passion for over 40 years, helping to establish the endowment and to actively define the dual governance structure of trustees and governors that set Skowhegan's board apart. Together, David and Melly represented 112 years of commitment to Skowhegan, a remarkable thing for an organization that's only 74. And the art world and this place are forever changed by their stewardship and care. Like them, our current boards, led by Anne Gund, Donald Moffat, and Alan Wansenberg, have demonstrated generosity and exceptional thoughtfulness as we navigate this precarious period. We are beyond grateful to our awards dinner co-chairs, our vice chairs, and our event donors. Your essential contributions have kept Skowhegan on course and our full team in place. Diana Al-Hadid and Rob Swainston created the breathtaking print Hindsight during quarantine. And to each of you who called, texted, and emailed over the last 6 months just to check in, thank you. Your interest and care keeps Skowhegan strong. Like so much else during this pandemic, the virtual event that we have today was a forced pivot that has uncovered tremendous opportunities. This includes the fantastic chance to celebrate with a much larger community of alumni and friends, and the occasion to utilize technology in new and important ways. To that end, I share the chance to donate directly from your phone by texting Give to SCOW to 44321. And I smile knowing how pleased the late, great David Beitzel would be to see that we had finally been able to put this in place. Today, as generations have done for Skowhegan, we will demonstrate collective leadership and responsibility for this school and model a different kind of institution, one led by artists for artists. Thank you and enjoy the program.
I'm Ann Gund, Chair of Skowhegan's Board of Trustees, and I welcome you on behalf of Donald Moffat, our Chair of the Board of Governors, and the rest of our board members. Just a few months ago, a virtual annual dinner would have seemed preposterous, and yet here we are. I am so grateful to you for tuning in and continuing to support Skowhegan during this incredibly challenging time in our country and our world. Although, of course, it was the right decision, we were all sorry that we had to postpone the 2020 season. The resilience of this organization since then, however, has been truly inspiring. We have honored all our commitments to this year's faculty, artists, and summer staff, and used the summer months to work on critical campus projects so that we will even be more prepared to welcome artists next June for our 75th anniversary season. This has been possible thanks to the collective efforts of my fellow trustees and governors, our co-directors and full-time staff, and all of you, our community of alumni, faculty, and friends, old and new. Though it's crushing not to actually be with you, we will do our best to celebrate a wonderful and deserving group of honorees. The silver lining of this virtual event is that we can champion the impact and importance far beyond the walls of a ballroom. Thank you to the many talented artists, curators, and collaborators who participated in this video tribute, to ANATSUI, Barbara Hunt McClanahan, the Foundation for Arts and Preservation in Embassies, and to chairs Eleanor Aquavella, Sir David Ache, Bob Colacello, Kiara Edmonds, Sidney Lansing, Jane Lauder, Joel Shapiro, Ellen Phelan, and Aaron Zindoffer for your support. Interspersed with tonight's awards will be performance and testimonials by Skowhegan alumni and faculty. They are our best ambassadors. If you take one thing away tonight, I hope it is a deeper appreciation for the diversity and visionary work of the artists within this community. I cannot emphasize enough how important support at every level is to help us navigate this uncertain moment so that we can emerge stronger and be better able to support artists in the future. It is now my honor and privilege to present the Skowhegan Impact Award to the Foundation for Art and Preservation in Embassies. As FAPE's President Emeritus, I can attest firsthand to the remarkable qualities of this diplomatic, independent organization that believes the art of our time is one of the most powerful expressions of what it means to be American, transcending party and policy at any given moment. I have the deepest respect for FAPE's cultural diplomacy and the leadership of Director Jennifer Duncan, Chair Carole Lauder, President Eden Rafshoon, and Vice President Darren Walker, and the rest of FAPE's governance. Please join me in raising a glass as we hear from a few of FAPE's extraordinary leaders.
Yo-Yo Ma talks about art for life's sake. I take that to mean that art bears witness to the most precious part of what makes us human. I'm so pleased to introduce the remarkable and amazing Carole Lauder, Chairman of FAPE.
To everyone at Skowhegan, thank you. FAPE is honored to receive the Skowhegan Impact Award and join the exemplary roster of artists, individuals, and organizations who have been recognized by your distinguished institution. Congratulations to fellow honorees ANATSUI, Barbara Hunt McClanahan, and I would like to acknowledge and thank Skowhegan's Chair, Board of Trustees, Ann Gund, who is also FAPE's extraordinary President Emerita, Chair, Board of Governors, Donald Moffat, Board President, Alan Watzenberg, Dinner Chair Trustee, Eleanor Aquavella, who also serves as co-chairman of FAPE Circle, and she does a spectacular job. Co-directors, Katie Sonnenborn and Sarah Worknell, Deputy Director Carrie Woodner Bamford, as well as the late David Bitzell, who was not only a Skowhegan alum and dedicated board member, but also a very important part of FAPE and one of our wonderful friends at FAPE. Thank you.
Looks good to me, so I think we can start.
The mission of the organization has always been to provide the best American art for our U.S. embassies around the world. Right now, our main focus is on providing major site-specific works of art for our U.S. embassies. That program started in 1998 when Joel Shapiro was commissioned for the new U.S. Embassy in Ottawa, Canada. This was a monumental piece. It was the first embassy that had been built in over 20 years. It's something that we gave to the people of Ottawa. It's a renowned American artist, a significant work of art, which starts a dialogue, and it's an easy way for people to get to know one another and connect communities. Our community, embassy personnel, people who visit from the United States, and the people of Ottawa. The Foundation for Art and Preservation in Embassies was founded to enhance the cultural diplomacy efforts of the State Department. Since 1986, we've been building a collection of American art that can be shared with people throughout the world.
It is the only public-private partnership to advance the commissioning of American art in our embassies and consulates around the world.
Our oldest program is the original print collection, which was established in 1989. We're creating a collection of art that it's a lasting legacy. It's a gift to the people of the world, the people who visit our embassies. It's a way for them to get to know who we are as a nation.
To see FAPE's impact internationally, you only need to visit one of our embassies or consulates to see the great Ellsworth Kelly in Beijing, Maya Lin's work in Turkey, Carrie Mae Weems in New York.
The artists donate their work, their time, and their image to the organization. So the biggest benefactors of all by far are the artists.
The artists who have participated in our program have done it because they really believe in the power of art to transcend boundaries, and they want to share their work with the world.
I worked for a long time as a senior curator. I can tell you, people come into the museum and they don't salute the masterpieces. They don't bow down to great art. They come there to argue with what's on the wall, because mostly people don't like things that are new to them. They rebel against them and they say, what is this? My kid could do that. And then gradually they become familiar, and that is the process that takes time, but is essential to art and is proof that art actually does have an impact. Matisse famously said that art should be like a big, comfortable armchair that you sink into. Well, a lot of the time we're not at liberty to sink into an armchair, and not even all art should be something you sink into. It should be sometimes something that provokes you, that makes you think. But the point is, you can pay intense attention to it.
I think it's significant to say that we have worked with every administration since we were founded in 1986. FAPE is committed to sharing the breadth and depth of American art.
Nobody agrees on art. That's the whole point. It is a proposal about how the world should look, and you can accept it or reject it. You can reject it and then subsequently come to accept it.
Whether it's a painting, a sculpture, a work on paper, a craft, tribal art, we are always building our collection, always keeping that history of who we are as a nation together. The collection reflects the history, diversity, and freedom of expression of the United States.
And the world needs more that is new and fresh and, if you will, unentangled, unencumbered by preconceptions and secondary agendas. Just art.
Art is a major mechanism for engagement. It is a major way we connect with the world. I believe FAPE's mission in the future is bright, exciting, and essential.
As long as we have the artists who are supporting us, FAPE will continue to provide great works of American art with everyone throughout this world.
So I first learned about Skowhegan when I visited my mother, who was artist in resident at the time, and I was thinking, how did I not know about this place? And later when I was invited to be an artist in resident myself, I was thinking I'd rather be a participant. You know, you're initially set by the bucolic setting, the pond, the woods, but it's not until you set foot inside those studios that you really understand the magic of the place. It's like hermetically sealed alchemic experience where things become. And I often think about how my own career and course in life may have been changed had I experienced Skowhegan as a participant. But I know as an artist in resident and as a governor, it's altered my life as well.
Hello, people of Skowhegan. Steve DiBenedetto here, just wanting to remark about what an amazing time I had up there at the school last year, exactly a year ago, and think about the place and the people almost every day, frankly. So it was an amazing time, and I hope I can get back somehow. I can be a student again, maybe. Okay, thanks a lot. Hope everyone's doing well. Take care. Bye-bye.
For me, one of the things that's most meaningful about Skowhegan has to do with duration. Art making is slow. Art making takes time. Building relationships and getting to know people takes time, and also changing either as an individual person or as a community also takes time. And these are all things that Skowhegan makes time for in a really unique way. I'm really looking forward to returning as faculty and to spend those weeks together and to see how we each transform as people and as artists such that we emerge different than we were when we arrived.
Hi everyone. Okay, so hard to pick a single Skowhegan thought or memory, but I go to, the summer I was there was this super intense thunder and lightning storm, like branches being knocked down and, a couple of lightning strikes. And of course, Sarah was thinking about the community and going around in a van, taking folks from their studios to the places that they slept. And she picked me up. And I have to say, it was such a wonderful experience. I got kind of greedy and stayed for the whole ride because it would be this thing of like, different configurations of people coming in and out of the van, having really interesting, fun, deep, sometimes conversations in the middle of this kind of scary, but also beautiful storm. And all of that feels somehow like a metaphor for the Skowhegan experience.
Hello, my name is Abigail DeVille, and it is my honor to celebrate Skowhegan's 74-year legacy and its lasting impact on generations of artists with you. For the last 74 years, Skowhegan has been a beacon of refuge, discovery, and a petri dish of firsts. I was lucky to participate in 2007. And that magical summer of first, my first time from home, my first studio visit. And who did I have the honor of a first studio visit? None other than tonight's sculpture medal recipient, ANATSUI. The scientist George Washington Carver said that if you love it enough, anything will talk to you. Love is evident in the mastery of ANATSUI's life's work. It's present in the handling of materials and their infinite permutations. It is in how they lay bare their secrets to us, the viewer. And now I am thrilled to introduce Damian Lentini, Nana Oforiatta Ayim, and Chika Okeke-Agulu, who will share more about El and his impact.
From the late 1960s onwards, ANATSUI has insistently probed how a contemporary sculptural model can be created from the abundant innovations found within classical and traditional art. Today, ANATSUI's renowned metal and wooden works blur the line between sculpture, painting, and assemblage. In his hands, light, form, color, transparency, and physicality converge, resulting in spectacular, inspiring, and most of all, triumphant works of art. Now, obviously, triumphant is the key word here, for Triumphant Scale was the title of the exhibition of El ANATSUI that opened at Haus der Kunst last year, before then traveling to Doha and following on to Bern. And just to give you an indication of the triumphant nature of this venture, we commissioned El ANATSUI to create his biggest ever work, a site-specific facade work spanning 110 meters long, 20 meters high, that completely covered the face of the building. Now, originally, when El saw our building and was beginning to conceive of this work, he asked me if I was able to find a printing manufacturer somewhere that would be able to provide us with 4,000 to 5,000 printing plates. I promptly found one in Bolzano in Italy, and we received these 4,000 to 5,000 printing plates. El then flew over to Munich, and about a couple of days in, it suddenly became very clear to all that 4,000 to 5,000 printing plates simply wasn't going to cut it. In the end, the work's second wave encompassed 10,000 printing plates, not only from this printer in Bolzano, but also from several newspapers in and around the city of Munich. And it became the face of the exhibition, which was one of the most successful ever held at Haus der Kunst. And just to give you an indication of the way in which the city really embraced both El ANATSUI and this exhibition, on the final day of the show, which was a Sunday, I went into the office to see the crowds milling out the front. And the line actually went from the ticket desk all the way out the door, down the road, past the American consulate, and continued on, despite the fact that the weather was miserable. It was raining constantly. Anyway, about halfway through the day, I went out of my office and went out the front door to go and get some lunch. And this little old Bavarian lady followed outside. And at some point, she stood on the steps of Haus der Kunst, and she yelled out to all the people waiting in the rain, "Hold up, it's so worth it." And with this in mind, with this sort of triumphant arrival of El ANATSUI in Munich, I can think of no other artist who is really more suited to such an honor. It really is the epitome of over 5 decades of practice, which really can be summed up in that word, triumphant.
I first met and worked with El ANATSUI in 2002, 18 years ago. I was curating my first show while still a student, an exhibition of contemporary Ghanaian art at the Liverpool Biennial. For the show, I loaned El ANATSUI's beautiful and elegiac wood carvings, Akwia's surviving children, which reference the children of Akwia who'd washed out to sea as flotsam on their passage across the Atlantic during the brutal slave trade. The venue of the exhibition was in Liverpool, where so much of the slave trade passed through, and the inclusion of the sculpture at this place, still a largely white, Euro-centered show, was particularly poignant. Even though he wasn't then yet the great El ANATSUI that he is today, his works were already then full of the genius, the beauty, the depth that they are today. In person, he was also as he is today. His gentle, warm, open spirit, wise, almost zen-like, almost egoless, when working completely at one with his work, not a tantrum or unwieldy demand in sight. I've often thought when collaborating with artists much younger than El ANATSUI, who show signs of petulance or hubris, how well they would do to watch and learn from the master. His simplicity, his humility, his graciousness, his ease, his infinite curiosity of and generosity towards other artists' work. In Ghana, it's almost taken for granted that most of the next generation of artists, the Ibrahim Muhammads, the Adequate Clottes, owe a huge debt to the grammar and language of El ANATSUI's work. It's only once, maybe twice in a generation, that a person creates such and impact in their expression, that everything that comes after it is marked by it. ANATSUI is that once-in-a-generation artist, and it's been my great privilege to have been able to share in his light and in his energy since the very beginning of my career. Thank you, Al.
I'm thrilled that my teacher and friend, ANATSUI, has been awarded the 2020 Skowhegan Medal for Sculpture, which recognizes him as one of the leading artists of our time. Since the past 50 years, ANATSUI has consistently pushed to redefine meaning, status, and condition of the sculptural object, producing works that are simultaneously intriguing, profound, inventive, polysemic, spectacular, and epic. For this reason, I cannot think of anyone more deserving of this award this year than ANATSUI. But I think that this award speaks to the impact he has had, not just on the art world, but also on the Nsukka community in Enugu State, Nigeria, where he has lived and worked since 1975. ANATSUI is that rare contemporary artist whose practice evolved from an organic relationship with its local, environmental, cultural, and human context. And it is in recognition of that the traditional ruler of Nsukka Autonomous Community conferred on him just about a year ago, the chieftaincy title, Ikedire, which in Igbo language means efficacious power. In ANATSUI's hands, thus, sculpture powerfully and profoundly transects the domains of art and life. So I am deeply honored to have been asked by ANATSUI, my former teacher and studio master, and still my friend, to receive this important award on his behalf. Thank you.
On a night of full moon at Skowhegan, 5 participants decided to walk through the woods without flashlight, hard to walk among the black trees. Moonlight seeping through the forest. It wasn't raining. After meandering for some time, they came out to the upper fields. It was a starry night. Objects were casting long moon shadows, sitting and talking in the wide open space near some abandoned beehives. The participants saw a giant bull moose coming out of the woods about 100 yards from them. The moose stared at them, started sneezing from the moonlight, snorted a few times, turned back, and disappeared into the dark. It was raining. The participants now had to go back through the same batch of woods the moose disappeared into. They were wondering what to do. Suddenly, they realized they're surrounded by wild blueberry bushes. The participants picked up the blueberries. They popped them in their mouths. It was not raining.
Skowhegan is a place where you can build an education. You can build your own education. It's where radical learning can happen, where you can traverse the underground with people who want to be there with you, and where you can have exceptional growth in your ideas and thinking just by being with other people.
met Barbara Hunt in 1996 while working at the non-for-profit gallery Art in General. It was my first job after college. Barbara and I had arrived in New York around the same time, and she came from London to run visual aids and was co-curating the selected works of Darrell Ellis, an African-American photographer who died of AIDS in 1992, and whose estate was being organized by Art in General into a traveling exhibition. We became fast friends, and often in the gloomy work office, we all looked forward to the days she was there, working in the archives. If you were fortunate enough to know Barbara, you understand how much light she shined, how infectious her smile was, and lavished in her giggle, which always seemed to come at just the right moment. She went on to become the director of Artist Space, offering me my first solo exhibition in 2006. From there, she moved on to the Judd Foundation, and then her final job at the Children's Museum of Arts in Manhattan, expanding the hearts and minds of a future generation of creatives. She was on the board of directors at the African and Asian Visual Arts Archive. She was involved in Godzilla, an Asian American artist network, and she touched so many lives in profound and important and joyful ways. The Governor's Award is given for service to artists. Think about that. Serving the needs of artists. She championed the people that she worked with, energetically supported the artists she exhibited, and those that could have been forgotten, like Darrell Ellis, and all the histories held in the registry maintained by visual aids to this day. She always advocated for diversity and representation. Much of arts administration happens behind the scenes, and often without expressions of gratitude. I'm honored that the Skowhegan family recognizes the hard work, generosity, and kindness that Barbara contributed to the field over the years, to the benefit of many, many artists such as myself. Thank you very much.
I heard the sound. Great.
I don't think I ever came into a room where there was Barbara and other people where she didn't grab one of them and grab another one of them and put them in front of me. And she would always say, this is so-and-so, they're doing this and that, and you need to meet each other because you're working on this thing.
Anybody who knew Barbara or had crossed paths with her, whether they were a board member or an intern, would speak about her generosity and her spirit of wanting to collaborate and her spirit of wanting to help.
She had a way of doing everything, believing wholeheartedly in the mission and in the project and in the possibilities, but first and foremost in the people that were affiliated.
Barbara understood that art making and the experience of art was really a spiritual path.
I first met Barbara HUNT MCLANAHAN when she was the newly appointed director of Artist Space. She was very energetic and very British and very committed to artists.
Even when she was the director at Artist Space and I worked as a curator there, you never had the feeling that you were working with somebody who was your superior or your boss. You were working with a friend, so the projects you work on were always a sense of a shared adventure.
She was excited to look at what was then slides and transparencies that were submitted by all sorts of artists and look at emerging artists and think about furthering the careers of younger artists.
I vividly remember meeting Barbara in the middle of an exhibition called A Living Testament of the Blood Fairies. Barbara was about to interview as director for visual aids. It seemed rather emblematic that we would meet at this exhibition because the title very much spoke of what Barbara would be helping us do, which is to all tell our stories.
Barbara was always unafraid to speak up when there were issues of discrimination or racism or gender bias. She wanted to see the art world fulfill its promise that it was serving a larger public.
Barbara had an understanding that an organization is very much like a person and a human being with a history behind them and hopes and dreams that are yet to be realized and yet to be worked out. So Barbara had a way of nurturing individuals and seeing the best in them.
There was definitely a whimsy about her, and she would find the fun, but I think that she also knew that there were issues at play and she was serious about her work, but that she did it with a smile and people liked being around her.
I think that she's spoken about that in terms of the pleasure that art gave her and that she wanted that to be shared more widely. You experienced it when you were with Barbara, a real sense of joy, a real sense of belonging, and a real sense of openness.
For Barbara to be able to bring her experience of running education programs at other institutions, whether it was the Judd Foundation or Artist Space, to an audience of 2 to 12-year-olds and their families was a perfect career trajectory.
Part of it was the idea that it wasn't just a museum of children's art, but it was a museum of contemporary art that was geared towards bringing children and their families in.
I was reading in this exhibition field guide that Barbara published in 2016. It really speaks to this idea of how Barbara would bring people together. Sitting around a table making art is like breaking bread together. It enables openness and it encourages dialogue, whether at the museum or at home.
Artist Space was a scrappy little arts organization at the time, and we did everything ourselves. We would go to Chinatown Lumber, pick up the sheetrock ourselves, build the walls ourselves, do the spackle and the paint, install the work, and at the end of the day, Barbara would come with a bucket and sweep up the floors and say, well, if all the other staff is doing physical work, then the director has to come in and clean up after them. And that was the spirit with which she was going about everything.
Barbara's ethos reminds me that we're here because we have a love of art and we have a love of other people.
Kindness matters. There are plenty of smart people who aren't kind. You need to be compassionate and empathetic, and I think it is something that Barbara lived.
She was a fighter, and she really believed that if we just put our back into it, we could make big changes.
There's so many different ways that one manifests a life as an artist, and each is significantly valid. It's vitally important to affirm that creativity and that creative spirit within us and affirm the individuals that we are. I'm really grateful to honor her in the way that she's honored all of us by touching our lives and sending us out into the world stronger for knowing her.
I just want to share a piece of advice that I got before I went to Skowhegan in 2004. I got in touch with Beverly Sims, who had nominated me to teach that summer, to ask her what I should bring. And amongst other things, she said, well, you may want to bring a wig. It's a very different time, but you may want to bring a wig.
Skowhegan to me is sneaking off and going to the river, skipping dinner from the instruct from Peter the gardener who told me the secret spot on the river, coming back and ending up sitting in the barn in a crazy jam session, still in my waders, banging away on the drums while Shayla Miller sings the most divine, hey mom, hey dad, I'm really fucking mad. That's a good enclosure, people.
The awards dinner, in its practice of recognizing the important work of artists, supporters, patrons, visionaries, is such a beautiful demonstration of the power of art. And tonight is no exception. In fact, We possibly need it now more than ever. Thank you all for sharing tonight with us and for your attentiveness and generosity in supporting our work, whether in person or online. When I was in high school, I was mildly obsessed with an early 20th century travelogue by a British writer named H.V. Morton called In Search of England. Thinking he had spinal meningitis, he begins the book. I believed that I was dying in Palestine. In the black depths of misery, I climbed a hill overlooking Jerusalem, and turning as accurately as I could in the direction of England, I gave way to a wave of homesickness that almost shames me now when I recollect it. I find it impossible to put into words the longing that shook me. I have forgotten the pain in my neck, but never will I forget the pain in my heart. I think for many of us, those who live and work and make at Skowhegan, this, without exaggeration, describes what it feels like to be without it. We are listless. We are a little lost without the specific joy, exhilaration, intensity, danger, endurance that comes only with being there. The grounds, those glorious, expansive 400 acres, lie in sharp contrast to the ways in which we all have lived physically over the past 6 months, contained in our homes, contained in our mobility. And yet for many people, containment is not a new experience. It is a reality that we as a country are maybe now beginning to grapple with. Containment can be physical, but it can also be psychological and emotional. It imposes false limitations on how we see ourselves, how and if we are seen by others at all. And most tragically, it crams what might be possible, what is potential, what might be expansive, into restriction. And this is where our democracy has failed us. Our understanding of what freedom is has let us down. We have all accepted it before this pandemic and even now without really seeing the limitations of how it has been enacted. As Katie mentioned, we're working on our own book, a history that will tell the story of our founders who had their own vision of democracy, of freedom, and their own urgent needs to protect artistic practice and process, but also themselves, by creating a space where we needn't follow or ascribe to societal constrictions on our body, on our bodies, on our thinking, our genders, our sexualities, on who we are and who we might become. The campus itself is a physical manifestation of another version of closure, closing in for protection without closing up. I think about that longing to be there, that pain in our hearts at not being able to live out this other attempt at freedom, this other experiment with democracy, which sometimes fails, not necessarily because of itself, but because the limitations of our own visions are being tested. And as these months have unfolded, through pandemic, through precarity, through protests, and fevered attempts at correcting that which has long been dangerously broken, it has also become clear to me what Skowhegan is, what it offers, who it touches and compels, as we live our lives not on that campus, but in this particular expansive containment. The experience of Skowhegan is an attempt to move beyond restriction, to experience and envision ourselves and ourselves in relation to others without bounds. This means different things to different artists, but the resistance to restriction is at its heart. And inasmuch as Skowhegan is a place, that heart lies with the people that make Skowhegan, people who challenge history, people who represent the unrepresented, people desperately in search of a language that doesn't rely on existing limitations and expectations, people who transcend geography by being in and of the world. It is exceedingly hard work, but it is one way in which to envision the world we want beyond the world that we have. It is why we are here tonight, and it is why we will wake up tomorrow to find new ways to do this work wherever we might find ourselves. Outside of this room, outside of this pandemic, outside of what we have been given, and in deep service to where we might go. For the past 6 years, I've also been obsessed with a letter in our archives written by an artist named Florine Teal in 1965 to Skowhegan's founder, Bill Cummings, 6 years after she was a participant in the program. In it, she tells the story of being a Black artist in the Jim Crow South and what it felt like to be at Skowhegan, what her disappointments and sadnesses were in her life. She ends her 9-page letter. I shudder when I think of the waste of humanity in this country, but when I think of Abraham Lincoln, President John Kennedy, and many others, perhaps trying to help others to help themselves isn't so futile after all. Great leaders are needed in such a confused society, and the dignity to love is so much healthier than the degradation of hatred. She continues, "Please forgive if anything harmful has been said. I am trying to express in goodwill. But perhaps, if time is convenient, you could help somehow." We are here tonight to help Skowhegan do its important job in the world, and it is crucial. But each and every one of us watching this, participating in this, has so much power in exactly the way that Florine understood. And so tonight, I too ask in this moment of pandemic, in precarity, and in protest, that we answer her. That we use our power to help. That we use our power to do more. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in tonight for Skowhegan's virtual awards dinner in honor of our amazing honorees and this incredible place. We are so grateful for your support and encouragement during this crazy time, and we look forward to seeing you in person soon.
It's been a real pleasure sharing tonight with you. Please join us on our Instagram Live for a special DJ set with Mr. Vacation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.